Hi everyone, welcome to lesson 5.1.2, marginal, joint, and conditional probabilities. This lesson is going to be broken out into three separate videos, one for marginal probability, one for joint probability, and one for conditional probability. In each of the three videos, we're going to be working with the data that you see listed in this table on your screen. So this data is coming from a 2010 census showing marital status by sex for people over the age of 18 living in the United States. And what I want you to note, so the numbers that you're seeing are actually written in terms of millions of people. So for example, if you look at the males who have never been married, that's 33.7 million men who reported that they were never married. So I just wanted to clarify so that you didn't think like 7/10 of a man was never married, but maybe the other 3/10 of him were, or something along those lines. Also, just to kind of, I guess, in theme with your book, they do note that widowed is referring to either a widow or a widower. So in other words, their spouse has died. Just in case you did not know that. Also, please recall that in order to find the forearm, it is located between your wrist and your elbow. So we're going to go ahead and start investigating some different probabilities here. Also, we can refer to these probabilities as proportions. So I'm going to look at question 1 located on the first page of this lesson. And it is asking us, I'm going to write this on the side, what proportion of the adult population, and I'm going to shorten population to pop, in the US is male. So what I want us to note here is that this is somewhat similar to how we were investigating some of the problems that we had in lesson 5.1.1. You kind of want to ask yourself, well, who is the pool or who is the population that I'm going to ask a question to? So in this case, it's usually kind of listed out in the order that you want to kind of go when you're reading the question. So it says, what proportion of the adult population in the US? So the pool or the group that we want to go to is, we just want to go to US adults. Well, in this case, US adults is actually going to be this total sum that we have in the lower right-hand corner. Because again, this is representing all the men and the women in this group. Okay, so I know that if I'm setting up my proportion here, I'm going to have that 229.1 million sitting underneath. There's really no need to actually expand out the number. You can kind of treat the million as a unit of measure in this particular case. So then within this group, and as weird as it may sound, we're basically saying, go to this adult population and ask people, are you male? Okay, so if we come back to this information, then we note that there are 111.1 million people out of the 229.1 million people that we're talking to who are male. And if we simplify this down, we end up getting, this comes out to about 0.485. So proportions are usually presented just as their decimal form. We tend not to go all the way into a percentage, although it's not necessarily incorrect to do that. So this answers the first question. So we're basically saying 0.485, or in other words, 48.5% of the people that we have in the census identify as male. All right. So very similarly, if we were to go through, let's go ahead and adjust for the next question. So we're going to look at question 2. So for question 2, it's asking us what proportion of the adult US population is currently married. So again, we want to start looking through and seeing who is the group that we're going to go to, and then you're going to follow that up with what question am I going to ask everyone in the group. So again, it kind of goes in order when you read through the question. The group that you want to go to is usually the one that comes up first or is described first in your question. So what proportion of the adult US population? So that's referring to my 229.1 million people. So this is my pool, and they go in the bottom. Okay. And then the question that I want to ask everyone is, hey, are you currently married? And what we want to note is the only people who are currently married are going to be in this row that are married. Okay. So we don't count widowed because even though their spouse may have passed away while they were still married, remember the vows till death do us part kind of thing. I guess that's the way that you should think about it. So of the 229.1 million people that we're talking to, 129.5 of them are currently married. This proportion then comes out to about 0.565. Oop. Okay. There we go. Finally got that to work. So again, we would present our answer rounded to around the third decimal place. And you could also say, technically, that of the people that are surveyed here, 56.5% of them are still currently married. So this ends up being an example of marginal probability, because if you've noticed, the entire time that we've been looking at these two problems thus far, all of our work has been happening in the margin. Okay, we haven't really sampled anything within the data. We've been pulling everything and what I have highlighted in either in the green. Okay, so I'm going to have you all investigate question number 3, and then we're actually going to take a look at question 4, and then I will leave you to do question 5. So let me go ahead and clear my board, and we'll move forward to question number 4. So for question number 4, we're essentially doing the same thing that we had done in questions 1 and 2. The only difference is they're providing their question in probability notation. So in other words, what you're seeing here where it says P with the word widowed in parentheses, this is essentially asking what's the probability that a US adult is widowed. This is another way of reading this question, and hopefully that kind of helps to bring this about, or kind of bring about a plan of attack for this one. So again, what I want you to note is we're still going to just all US adults. Again, it's going to be very different if I ask you, well, what's the probability that a man is widowed? Okay, notice how that question sounds different as opposed to what's the probability that a US adult? Okay, so I'm removing sex and I'm just saying talk to anyone out there. So in this case, we again are going to go to our pool of 229.1 million people. And the main thing that we are interested about is are they widowed? So what's the probability that a US adult is widowed? So US adult being the pool that we're going to go to, and then we're going to essentially walk up to each individual person and say, this is a little bit of an awkward question, but is your spouse dead? So maybe you can figure out a way to maybe say that a little bit nicer than I just did. We have a grand total of 14.4 million people who will unfortunately say that their spouse has passed on. So at this point, we would then take care of our division, and this would come out to around 0.063. This is our probability. So again, if you were talking about this, you could say around 6.3% of US adults are widowed. So again, note that we did all of our work working with values in the margin of this table. And this is why this is called marginal probability. All the information that I need in order to answer the question is happening on the outskirts of this data table. All right, so this is going to conclude video 1. Please go ahead and continue to work on question number 5, and then I will meet you back here for video number 2, dealing with marginal probability.